just to synchronize your audio. Synchronize. Just repeat after me. Synchronize. 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 Try to follow me with your voice. So we can get
Synchronize. Okay.
synchronize. Synchronize.
Synchronize.
Synchronize.
Synchronize.
This is taking me back to like fucking high school, where like half the high school are the kind of people to clap on 1 and 3 instead of 2 and 4.
Yeah.
You know, people that clap on 1 and 3 instead of 2 and 4. I just hate those kind of people. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's awful.
It's Jazz's worst enemy is people who clap on fucking 1 and 3.
Oh no.
You know how many times I started editing that first episode we did, and I had to like cut around people talking over one another, and they would just say the same thing the second time so they could be heard.
Oh.
So it made more sense to cut off the first time they said it. And so since Neo has the most latency, it happened the most with him talking, so it kind of works out. But there's other times when there's just like kind of, it's tough. So there was a kind of a lot of editing behind that.
Yeah. How many awkward silences?
Quite a few. Those are the other ones where I had to be
Nice.
like, okay, let's just cut that out.
I mean, it's
completely.
understandable since it's like always that delay, seeing as we're all around the world. Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, in that spirit, welcome, listeners. I'm Noah of the channel TravellingHalo, and this is not a Halo podcast, where my friends and I try and likely fail to talk about anything but Halo. Thank you for listening in. It is my honor and privilege to be joined by 4 of my friends today. All of us, 3 of our friends today. Let me try that line again. That's not true anymore.
That's okay. You had
It's
your
my
booster.
honor.
You had your booster. It's okay.
It's very true. It is my honor and privilege to be joined by 3 of my friends today, all of us artists and or musicians, connected, of course, by our shared love of Halo. I will let them introduce themselves in the written order.
GQ, Alyx.
Oh. I thought it was somebody else I was supposed to go first.
No.
It's alphabetical, isn't it?
It's alphabetical, and there's also a
Right.
numerical list.
I'm
on the
always
script.
last.
Okay. I'm Alyx. I'm a composer and producer.
Hello, I am Neo. I am possibly a composer and a producer, but really I'm just trying to make it here alive.
Hello, I'm Wernissage. I guess I'm an artist, but I also dabble in music as well.
Oh man, you should have also said you were a composer and producer.
I'm a composer and producer and artist. Wannabe artist.
And this is not a Halo podcast. So, what are we drinking? Let's get a bev check.
I got nothing because I just drank it all, but it was water.
Oh no.
Venti
I got myself
pistachio.
some yeah, go ahead, Alyx.
I got a venti pistachio frap that I got with a gift card from Christmas.
Nice.
Sweet.
I got myself some I think it's strawberry, raspberry, and banana smoothie.
Hey, that sounds good.
I got a giant jug of water because I just got my booster shot and I'm trying
Lame.
to hydrate.
Gotta hydrate,
Very
buddy.
lame. Very uncool thing to do. Very
Yeah,
uncool.
staying healthy.
Is this what is being adults just being more boring? Is that what it is?
Yeah, like the most spicy thing is a fucking smoothie.
Yes.
Like Jesus Christ.
It is. That is the answer. That is correct. So today, I think we should talk about something that we can all relate to, which has to do with the fact that we're all original artists, but we also all make like Halo fan art and music. And I just want to like get your perspectives on how this is how recording normally goes for me. I have big long pauses.
Yeah, you're good.
On how it is balancing your workflows, or how bad you are at balancing your workflow in terms of like getting your original dream ideas done versus being like, yeah, or I could just like copy Marty O'Donnell right now and spend my time doing that.
Oh damn, is that all I had to do? Oh man, I've been doing this wrong the whole time.
Well, if people kept copying Marty O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore all the time, we wouldn't have the great names in Halo that we do now, like Tom Salta, Curtis Schweitzer, Joel Kurlitz, all those people, and Alex Bohr for the multiplayer in Halo Infinite.
Mm-hmm.
They all bring like new flavors while still, in their own unique ways, respecting the original art and music.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not to mention Neil Davidge and Cosima Janucci.
And Stephen Rippey. Let's not forget.
Right, Stephen Rippey.
Speaking of Halo Wars.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. I think that those guys would attest to the fact that it's important to invest in what you think is great and learn it from the inside out. You know, because if anything, it empowers what you can go on to do in your own work, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's probably true. This is true also of the artists that like have worked. Like, speaking of Halo, worked on Halo. You know, another good example though too would be like Sid Mead. You know, and the concept art that Sid Mead would produce for like Blade Runner, Star Wars, and a lot of the guys who would go on to work on other projects. There's almost always an inspiration from another previous IP, and the reason for that is because, you know, they invest so much. They've invested so much at some point studying that other thing, and they were just a big, like for instance, Blade Runner nerd, and then they went on to make Star Wars stuff, right? Or whatever it may be. I think that happens a lot, and I think that that's really important.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you think of any examples of that, I guess? Maybe not.
I did have one. It's on the tip of my tongue. It was from... I think it was from a movie, but if I remember it, I'll bring it up. It might have been like The Dark Crystal, maybe. Oh wait, no, that was like a series or something. The Dark Crystal was a movie from way back in the 80s, I think. It's a really interesting, very interesting world, and I think 4 or 5 years ago they started making a new series based off it that I believe has a whole new set of artists, but it very much carries based on the sort of traditional presentation of the original thing, while also expanding on it. Although I haven't actually seen it myself, I've only heard about it. I never got around to actually finding out how good it was. But I can imagine that's sort of one example of having kind of a new team of people that sort of study the original and then have to find that balance between, you know, what is the balance between kind of just continuing on the existing work while also, you know, putting your own imprint on it as well, because naturally over time I think everything has to evolve, or it sort of just drowns. I think you have to have that sort of that movement always of, no matter what the speed is, there always has to be something that's kind of adjusting or evolving over time, because I think that's what keeps the art interesting and evolving over time, to be able to look at it in hindsight and sort of see that progression of how it's changed over the years as maybe a series continues on or something like that.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, that makes me think, even though this isn't a Halo podcast, of course, it makes me think of like Halo Infinite and how interesting of a case that is, because it's like with Halo 4, we saw like a really new take on the art style of Halo. So like, I don't know, what I'm trying to say is like we started to miss the old style because we didn't feel like, I mean, most of us probably felt like most of us probably felt like it was a huge change in a small amount of time, you know, with both the Covenant and the UNSC stuff and all of that. So I think it was interesting with Halo Infinite, because instead of it being just repetitive, going back to the old art style, it kind of felt fresh, because we hadn't been there since like 2007 or 2011, which I just think it's kind of interesting how in this case it kind of worked going back to the old art style, even though it's not exactly the same. It's very much inspired by it. So I think it's interesting how, like, even with stuff like Star Wars, that like the prequels kind of changed some of the aesthetics as well of some of the designs in that universe. And I mean, it's debatable, but with The Force Awakens, we kind of saw more of that old school Star Wars aesthetic back. Kind of not that hyper futuristic style, which I think is kind of interesting, like going back to the original while still keeping it fresh, even though it's actually an old art style. I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I totally agree. Like, especially the Mandalorian. That's what it is. Like the newer shows and things, and right now they've got a Boba Fett show going that is much better than I even thought it would be. But that's even stronger in that direction. You know, the Star Wars. You know, the whole idea in the beginning was the like it's spacefaring, and it's like future-y looking aesthetic, but it's dirty and junky.
Yeah.
And definitely the prequels got into like very high concept. I think it was a lot more in the direction of like Sid Mead's art, because Sid Mead's art can be very fantastical, and the architecture is all very clean, and that this is all that the prequels was big on. So I definitely agree with that one. And I think Halo is similar in that way. You know, like Alien kind of went that same direction that Star Wars did, and then Halo takes Alien and incorporates it, you know, into part of its DNA. James Cameron's Alien, you know, and that kind of a sci-fi.
This is also making me think a lot about like rock or punk or metal bands, where the longer they're around, the more they start to like explore other genres of music or insert new flavors into whatever they're coming out with. And eventually over time, there's a sort of breaking point where the fans are so disconnected from the music that they first listened to and what's now coming out, that the band sort of has to have, or like take a step back and evaluate what got them to where they are now, which is usually followed by like a throwback album, like Avenged Sevenfold releasing some of their older material from like 2008 or 7. Metallica following Saint Anger, they released Death Magnetic and then Hardwired to Self-Destruct, which both of them are really good throwback albums as well. Or Slipknot in We Are Not Your Kind, and whatever their upcoming album now is, where it's starting to take a lot of influence from their earlier work, like Self-Titled and Iowa, and even a little bit of Grey Chapter, surprisingly enough. Just going forward, finding new flavors, and then finding ways to get those new flavors to mingle with the old flavors that people fell in love with to begin with.
Yeah.
I think music is probably definitely a really interesting example, because that's sort of an art form, I mean, very directly through pop music, where, you know, the music at the time is always very much a reflection of the times, and you know, I think very often to sort of survive in the economy of what everyone else is doing. In a lot of cases, artists have to sort of, they may find that they have to kind of adjust with the times, because it's sort of like a sink or swim kind of approach, which is, I guess that's kind of the, like that's the whole trick, right? Because it's figuring out how to be able to adapt to kind of the movement of just everything changing without sort of alienating the people that follow you for what you've always done.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You have people who are already fans of that music, and you don't want to step so far outside of it that they just can't relate to your new stuff. You have to be reverent enough of what came before to make it viable, but you still want to be pushing the boundaries, putting something new on, you know, into it that people can say, oh, this isn't, you know, they won't be saying, well, I might as well be listening to what happened before, you know. I think Halo Infinite's a great example of, like, if you want that kind of visual style, you're not just going to say, well, I might as well be playing Combat Evolved because it's that but better. You know, Infinite at least adds enough to Halo to where you're like, if I want what Infinite brings to the table, Infinite's the only place I'm going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of another example of this, but well, you know, I play baritone saxophone, and I've talked about this before, but I play baritone saxophone, and my very favorite baritone saxophonist is somebody who, when people hear me, if they know who he is, they will often say, "Gee, you sound just like him," and which is a compliment. But one of the even better compliments I once received was, you know, it sounds like you've listened to a lot of Pepper Adams, but like you still sound like yourself. And I was like, oh my God, that. You know,
That's
threw
the
me
ultimate
on the
compliment
floor.
for any
Yeah, that
artist, I
feels
think.
so much better to hear. Yeah.
Yeah.
When
Mhm.
you can hear from someone else that you have developed your own sound, I think,
Mhm.
based on whatever core foundations or inspirations you have, but you've built enough of like an identity that is actually yourself.
Yeah, that's definitely,
Yes.
for me, what's tricky about diving into the Halo music scene, I guess.
Mhm.
There isn't like
Which
a
there is one.
huge Halo music. Yeah, there is definitely one, but like original compositions coming out that don't really
It's very small.
use old and tried tricks like, you know,
Yeah.
defaulting to triplets or going for that classic E Dorian melody or
Yeah.
like bringing in throwbacks and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's, yeah, it's just difficult because most of the Halo music scene is just people taking what's already there and like using new plugins in their workstation or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't call
Or
me out
maybe
like that.
slowing it down or speeding up. I mean, I do it too. I do it too.
For
But yeah.
sure. No, it's very true. There's a lot of that. I often think of music. I relate everything in the music world to jazz because I'm very familiar with the jazz community. And the jazz community is something that's been, you know, in existence for about 100 years now, and there's a whole culture around it, you know, and that culture is based on in-person playing. And there's more than just the music that happens and contributes to the creation of the music. There's a hang too. You know, a big part of being a jazz musician is the hang that you go and, you know, you're at the bar with the band afterward or whatever, and
It's the connection.
the negotiating gigs. Yeah, there's like there's a huge human element to it, and there's a huge level of your personality that gets put into the music just because of the relationship between the people who are playing together, the verbal one, the non-musical one, and also there's a raw, like, you have to be able to play your instrument like fingers to keys or whatever to be able to actually to be able to hang and be part of that, you know, like you can't hide, right? Like if something's whack with your playing, like it's gonna sound whack, like, you know, and so you got to have at least a certain amount straight. And all four of us, I enjoy the fact that we all actually play an instrument. You know, like the fact that Alyx can just turn to a piano and start playing Halo tunes is badass. I think there's very few people who could actually do that, you know, who like have practiced and like aren't just, because I could figure it out by ear. A lot of, you know, I can play a lot of the different Halo things by ear, but I'd be sitting there going, okay, poke, poke, poke. Okay, that's what it is. You know.
Yeah,
You
same.
sit and it's
Yeah.
something that you do. It's in your fingers. You know, and
Yeah, that's
Wernissage-
definitely a lot.
Yeah.
That's definitely a lot of what I try to train on as much as I can for the kind of work that I do in the Halo community,
Mhm.
which is basically ruminating on what's already there and seeing where my mind takes me. Like, okay, so I know that this song is in like what, E Dorian or D minor or whatever. I know the melody goes here, but where else can I go from here? Does it sound right? And can this be its own thing instead of being connected to that old song?
Yes.
Absolutely. Marty was just talking about the concept of covers versus like to what extent, you know, at a certain point, somebody who's taking inspiration from a previous work deserves composer credit next to the names of the original composers.
I
like with Through
remember
the Trees.
it was, yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up. It was,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was November 2020 when there's a whole lot of stuff going on Twitter regarding Through the Trees, because I remember Marty tweeting like nice music or something like that, and he started to talk about how he hasn't been getting credit for a lot of what's been being put into Halo Infinite. It
Yeah,
was a whole mess, I remember. And
I
there's a lot of
remember.
discussion about where the line
People
is between
read the wrong.
a cover and its own thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was. Yeah, that definitely. He's since explained himself in a really interesting way, in the sense that he goes, music people know. Like, we have this unspoken thing about how covers work, about the fact that when you take somebody's previous work, you're saying, I'm doing a cover of theirs, and you give them credit that way, and it's pretty, it's something that we all do. But when you have a different entity involved, like a Microsoft, we can talk about this here because none of us have personal stake in this. We can be pretty overt about this conversation in comparison to the way that Marty has to talk about it. Poor guy. Like when you have a Microsoft who is commissioning this, they have all the say in terms of how the credits go and how people get credited. And it came off the wrong way. I'm pretty positive when Marty was like, boy, gee, I wish they would quit digging into my music, or I wish that they would credit me more often. He's just this, I'm gonna
Imagine reading impersonal text online and misunderstanding a conversation.
Yeah, right. That never happens. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing as well. It's there's so many ways you could take someone saying something like that, but I mean, from what I've heard, sort of Marty talk about with that kind of stuff. I mean, I think it's absolutely, it's coming from a good place when he's saying things like that. I mean, that's not necessarily just talking about in his case, but that, I mean, he's saying that on meaning for pretty much any composer or any, like, the whole music scene.
Yeah, that is more of a commentary for music as a whole, generally, definitely. And it's definitely not as Marty-centric as he makes it sound like it is in text form.
I guess I'm kind of gonna go off topic a bit, but not really. But I kind of feel like
we could use it. Please do.
No, but talking about like originality and what is originality, and like, how much is it your work when you do something? Like, I kind of feel like that's the thing with the stuff I do when I like redesign helmets or whatever, like Halo 5 helmets, to see how they look in Halo Infinite or something like that, and like the original art style. I kind of feel like, I never know if I want to call it my works, because it's not really, they wouldn't exist without the original works, but I put my mark on them. So that's why obviously I call them redesigns, and I make sure to always like, promote the artists who made them. But I always feel like that's a tough thing. Like, how do you, like, is that my original style, or am I just copying someone else's work? Am I just like demolishing someone else's work by just like making a bunch of doodles on it, like
by smoothing out all of their intricate design?
Yeah,
lines
like the lines.
like,
oh, that's too many lines. I'm just gonna color pick this
smear right
color and
over
just
that.
just get rid of it. Like that kind of gets. It's not that common, but sometimes I get people like they can kind of like express their concern with like, oh, you're just removing detail from these artworks, like which is understandable. That's always like the tricky part of art and music. Like, if you want to do something inspired by something else, or even like a remake of that, like
I mean, if anything,
like if
you
you're
do
just
oh, sorry to interrupt.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if anything you do as a derivative work, I think there'll always be that element of, it'll inevitably, whether you actually want it to or not, people will just compare it to the original. I think that's something that always happens, and the difficulty, I guess it's funny because is it a difficulty for the person interpreting your work, or is it a difficulty for the person creating the work that, understanding that it's not really a black and white thing of originality versus taking inspiration. I mean, you could interpret it as a spectrum of sorts, because it's not like you do one or other to the same degree, especially when you're particularly working on something that is inspired by previous works.
Yeah, exactly.
Very much. I think that what like especially Wernissage, when you redesign Halo helmets in one of the other styles of Halo art style, that raises a really interesting question, in my opinion, of like how much of this is original. But then it makes me ponder, well, how much of any art is original? Because even if you sit and have your guitar and play some chords that you've heard before, it's like, isn't that not really that different? Like you're playing same progression, and you might make a new melody up over the top of it, and maybe even add your own lyrics, based on something that you've written. But how different are those two things really? With I don't know, and on I was gonna say I don't know to what extent, like if you were to try to make money on those designs, which I know you don't have ambition to do, but if you were to want to do that, to what point could you start to say, yes, these are original, I can sell these for money completely legally? But then I thought about a second subtopic there of like, well, do the courts really decide what original art is? Because that's us handing the power over to a legal court to decide whether or not something's original, which is that doesn't necessarily mean that's what original art is. It's just what they would deem legal. So is that even a relevant part of the conversation?
Yeah, exactly. Because you could say like what I do when I redesign stuff, I usually just like grab a high-res screenshot of the helmet or whatever it is, and just like go into Photoshop, cut it out, and then I just do what I do. So I mean, you could say like if you use the base of someone else's work, it's not really your work. But what if I were to just like paint it from scratch but do it kind of differently? Like, is where do you draw the line? Like, when is it mine or when is it not mine? Like, every design in Halo after Halo CE is obviously just like inspired by the first game and the first designs. So it's all just copies, I guess, in a way, but not really. I don't know. It's an interesting topic. I don't really think there's an answer, but yeah, it's interesting.
That also makes me think of an artist I follow on Twitter, Dagger6. A lot of their posts are of tests for, like, I guess positioning of the characters, where they'll be standing a certain way, holding an item a certain way, or like they have something on their shoulder, whatever, and along with it, you can see what the reference pose was. So, and that's what a lot of other artists do. Like, they have on one screen, they might have a picture of somebody standing a certain way, and then on their main screen, they would be working on whatever. So there's also that sort of issue as well.
They talk about this in the Halo Infinite art book, about when they were designing Chief, putting him in different poses, just to see how it laid, how that design they were coming up with was going to work, like in action moments, Go ahead.
You also have to wonder about like key art poses as well. Like
so
Halo
now
2
I just feel
Chief with the keys,
Sorry,
or Halo
Alyx.
5 Chief with the assault rifle on the shoulder. Are those copyrightable, the way that he's standing?
The poses? Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. It's a great question. They have him dual wielding SMGs here, and Frank O'Connor says in the commentary, he's like, even though dual wielding might not be part of the game, we just want to see how Chief would work in, and I think what he's meaning is in poses that we've seen him in before.
Yeah. Does it still feel natural?
And does it still feel like Chief, as we know him to be? One of the really interesting designs in this book was this one, where it's essentially a Wernissage-ified Mark 6 mod.
I like that.
It's just got smooth lines.
That's so
It's really
cool.
nice.
It is pretty interesting looking.
Yeah. And talking about Chief's armor in Halo Infinite and originality, it's kind of interesting. Like, I'm pretty sure it's my favorite look of him so far. But it's interesting how it's like the least original one we've ever seen. Like, it's basically just the Forward Unto Dawn armor, just a bit modified, on the chest in some areas, and basically the Halo 3 helmet, just slightly modified with a new visor line and all that. It's kind of interesting how like, yeah, because originality doesn't equal good. Like, maybe it's a good thing that we saw a lot of different chiefs. So now we're at a point where at least I think we reached peak chief. So makes you think.
We can also associate different designs for the Master Chief with different eras of Halo.
Yeah.
Like, even the distinction between Halo 2 and Halo 3 Chief, they're somehow very different from each other, despite it literally being the same set of armor.
Yeah. It's green in Halo 3 is like my favorite yet, because it's a kind of cold green, like very cold army green. While in Halo 2 it was more like bright green, right? Like kind of the green.
And it still had that shiny thing that CE did.
Yeah.
Which is
the
awkward.
specularity maps.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like you don't see that in any of the concept art for either of those armors from like 99 and through into the earliest 2000s for those two different armors. Like, you don't see them representing that shininess, and so it just feels like a limitation of translation into the game engine to have it be that shiny. Like looking at Halo 2 Anniversary, you're like, that looks more like what they meant to go for. That campaign chief armor is pretty spicy. That was people's favorite until Infinite was revealed in like 2019.
It also brings up another interesting topic: whether a remade asset pays enough respect to the original asset.
Well, like, I have a lot to say about this.
Like, for instance, environments in Modern Warfare 2 campaign remastered, like the White House environment, it's a lot darker and more vibrant somehow, whereas in the original it was a lot more cinematic. It had some sort of yellow warm overlay on it, and the bloom was really intense, which is also a byproduct of the era, but it still gave its own unique appearance. It stood out from a lot of other cinematic Western shooters, especially those that are like all in Unreal Engine or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it really makes me think, like, I've always thought about, like, wondered how a perfect remaster would be. Like the most beautiful remaster for me is probably Halo 2 Anniversary. I just love how that game looks. But to be fair, like, they did kind of change most of the things about that. Like, even Chief's armor, even though it's like pretty damn accurate. It's not completely accurate. They kind of changed a few things, which you can see like in a lot of things, like the energy sword. I guess. Oh yeah, we saw different energy swords for campaign and multiplayer. Now that I think about it, but still, like, I've always thought about. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. You also have to take into account that you have campaign, you have multiplayer, and you have the blur cutscenes, because the blur cutscenes also use a whole other set of assets. I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, dude, that's been a pain in the ass when I made like different evolution of stuff when I painted like helmets and weapon stuff like that, because they were always different in the blur cinematics, so I had to like choose which one I wanted to focus on. That's a whole nother topic, but I've always thought it's interesting how even the best remasters never pay 100% tribute to the source material, which does make sense because, it's artists who work on these things. They don't just want to just make everything the exact same way it was, just more high res. Like, they want to do their own thing. It's understandable. But I would like to see, like, I can't remember the name. You know the guy on Twitter that makes like those perfect Halo 2 Elites like remasters?
Isaac Hanford?
No.
The Abby.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that. Like, that's
my
interesting.
God.
Like, that's
those are
a perfect
unbelievable.
remaster. Like, even though I love Halo 2 Anniversary, just imagine if Elites looked like that instead. Like, that would be kind of interesting. But I don't know. What do you guys think about remasters? How much tribute do they have to pay to the source material?
Actually, I wanted to ask you something, Wern. What do you think about Marcus Lato's remake of his own original Mark V?
Oh,
like
okay.
20 years later.
Let me bring it up. I've obviously seen it. I just wanna. Okay, there
I
it is.
haven't
Yeah,
like really looked at them side by side, to be honest.
me neither actually.
On
But
somebody who made a side by
it,
side. I found somebody who made a side by side video, and that was a really
yeah.
valuable. It's like, oh, you know what? I know who it was. It was Chunky or Bean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm pretty sure this is like the most. Uh, I guess it's the most accurate version, I'd say. Like it's debatable because the graphics weren't that good back then, so you can interpret different parts in different ways. But seeing as he's the one who created it, I'm
It's
pretty
also
sure
worth
that's the
looking
most.
at what
Check
liberties
out
he
that video
took
I sent.
now with the
Yeah,
technology that he has available to him, as
Mhm.
well as
yeah,
the evolution of his own art and where he decided to change things up a bit in his remake.
yeah, yeah,
I think it's
yeah. What
cool
do you
as
think
hell.
about it?
The idea of that is like peak for me, to be honest. It's like that is the original artist, the guy who's all those influences that he has that led up to him making that original design 20 years ago are the same. They're in the same person, right? And he'll be following the exact same paths of logic, just
Yeah,
with 20 years worth of perspective. I just think it's pretty damn cool. And I think that it does obviously a wonderful job of bringing forward those designs. But imagine if someone else had tried to do that, it wouldn't look exactly the same. But also for how, like, if somebody tried to be as faithful as Marcus was to the original design with those redesigns, imagine if someone else had done that, they would have to be giving credit to Marcus. Even though they're, it's hard to imagine because it's like, could a person ever have done exactly what Marcus did? Or was Marcus the only person who could have ever made those new assets exactly the way that they got made?
oh yeah. Makes
The
you think.
question. That's another
That
question.
is the question. Yeah, because like looking at this, it kind of makes me sad how we didn't see this in Combat Evolved Anniversary. Because
Very.
every artist is just a human being. They all deserve love. But just like speaking just like as an artist or whatever, I kind of feel like they missed the point with some of the stuff in CE Anniversary, especially Chief's look. Like they kind of
Yes.
got all the proportions wrong, and the visors like
Short arms.
yeah,
T-Rex
short
arms.
arms. Like
Yes.
isn't the visor like huge in a weird way? Like
Yeah.
it's
It's like
missing. It's
bulging
obviously
out.
missing the
It's really
reflections
square.
that kind of gave him the iconic look.
Yeah.
Like all of that is
The
just
helmet
present
reflection.
here, which yeah, I don't know.
Not to
I
mention
just
the missing visor reflection.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the reflection. Yeah, it's really an important part of the
Well,
detail in the visor.
I'm
There it is.
wearing it. This is
That's
a
interesting.
CE Anniversary launch T-shirt, and this is the cover art. And
Yeah, it's different. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
It's actually in the.
looks
See, I really
cool.
like what's on the
That thing
CE
is
anniversary
awesome.
cover.
yeah.
I don't think we've ever seen that anywhere else, right? Like I've just seen it
No.
there. I love that armor.
Exactly. Now
It's like
there,
a much
this
more
image,
sharp.
though, Late Night Gaming pointed this out at one point about this image, and it just blew my mind. He goes, "Something's always felt wrong about this. It looks really good, and on paper everything's right, but something's wrong. It's missing those reflections,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's something about it. It's missing those eyes that you talk about, Vernissage.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like they use visor lines later on, but with CE Chief, since there is no visor line, Marcus Leto added one though. But
Yeah.
since there is no one in the original design, the eyes are those shadows and reflections of the bill, and it's really
Yeah.
important for giving him like a humanizing the design, and giving you something to look
Exactly.
at in the face.
Yeah. So I think it's
Yeah.
interesting to think about, like, if you were to redesign the Mark V from Halo Combat Evolved, like, should you add visor lines, or is that like, do you kind of go too far? But
I think
if
that's
you
the
don't,
most controversial
you kind of
thing
lose.
about Marcus Leto's new assets is
Yeah.
that visor line. That's probably the most controversial aspect. I don't know if you would agree with that necessarily, but since it's the biggest departure from the original,
I'm not sure
I
I
think it
see
makes
it.
it-
Where
Is it
Where
like the
is it?
same as like the Halo 3 Mark V visor lines?
It's similar. I swear there is one. I'm pretty sure. I sent the video that Chunky Urbina put together
oh, okay.
to the chat. And he does some swipes, between the two designs.
Maybe it's an artist
Pretty
thing
positive
where
there is one. Maybe I'm wrong. No, there's a visor line. If you look at Chunky's video.
Oh yeah, there is. I
Yeah.
haven't seen that. Oh, so it's actually like the pretty much like the Infinite helmet visor line, kind of similar. Oh, okay, that's interesting.
I know.
Wow.
So that is, to me, that's the biggest departure from the original design.
Yeah.
Besides, he changed some proportion stuff too, but
Yeah.
I think they all look natural. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they all look pretty natural. Whatever changes
Yeah.
he did make, but that visor line is big difference.
Yeah, truly. I don't know if I'm still getting used to it. Maybe, if I were
Yeah.
to redesign this, I'm not gonna say I'm better than Marcus Lato,
Marcus
because obviously
Lato.
I'm not. Obviously I'm not. But I'd probably go for something like a line in the middle somehow, like not exactly like the one from Halo 3, but something more like something more calm. Because I think
maybe one that like goes across and then dips a little bit and comes back up.
yeah, exactly, something like that. Or even like, did you guys see the one from Halo 20 years celebration thing? Let me see if I can find it. Halo
that art that was
20
done by what's his name? By
what's his name? Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
I'm just gonna send it in the chat so y'all can see if I can locate the chat. There it is.
Yeah, I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah, because that kind of has more of a something I would like to see personally. Let's make sure I'm not sending the wrong thing. I don't know if you can see it there. It's kind of hard to see, but basically it's just like a line that goes like I think it goes in the middle, but then it kind of dips down towards the edge of the visor, which I think is a really interesting way of giving him some eyes, quote unquote.
I do think it's pretty yummy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
In a more simpler fashion.
That one does look really good. I was just finding, I was just tracking down the different artists who had contributed to that kind of Halo 4-5 look. The guys who they contributed their personal art, and the rest of their art looks like that too. But then whoever higher up who decided to hire them caused that style to become baked into Halo. Hence that look, and one of those guys is the guy who painted that image.
Oh, okay.
And so normally his personal art is a lot more in the direction of Halo 4 and 5, but it's interesting with a certain specific kind of direction. He produced that, which looks. It's a huge homage to the classics, and clearly those artists are capable of that.
Yeah.
But I think it has so much more to do with art direction than it does to do with the artists'
definitely.
choices.
Yeah,
and this is true of the music too.
Yeah, because correct me if I'm wrong, but it isn't it the same team of artists on Halo Infinite as it was in
mostly?
Yeah,
Pretty
like
much.
Sparth.
Yeah,
and it's a lot more classic, so you realize they're
Sparth
actually
is
very,
one of the
very
biggest
much,
ones.
Yeah,
Yeah. I don't know if Gabriel Garza is actually on the team anymore. He's the one who designed the Halo 4 chief. And Blue Team in Halo 5. I don't know if he is on Halo Infinite or not, but most of those other guys are.
Yeah, I gotta say I love Blue Team in Halo 5. That's maybe a controversial opinion, but I just love the look of Blue Team in Halo 5. Like, considering the art style in that game, I don't know. I think it's perfect.
Seeing them side by side with Osiris is you start to get the picture, because they talk about how they were trying to make the Osiris into the fighter jets and make Blue Team into the tanks.
Yeah.
And you definitely see that come out when you put them side by side. The artistic concepts are very strong in.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh no.
Only got him.
Yeah, only got him. There you are.
Are you still recording?
bearing down on me, and they're trying to shut me down.
Yep, that was classified.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
can't talk about it. It's too.
That feel when the NDA hits.
Yes, the tanks versus the fighter jets. That's what I was talking about. Like the concepts are really strong because the artists working on those two games were incredible, like amazing artists. But it has to, I've always thought that it has to do with the art direction, the reason that things got to depart so far from where it had been. And honestly, with Halo 4, I don't think they made the wrong call to have the designs change as much as they did. I think they should have stuck with that, and they should have just knuckled down and been like, yes, this is what we're doing. Because I think it's cool. I think they wanted to make it different. The art serves the story that they're trying to tell in that game.
Yeah.
And that is the most important thing. Everything should support the tone and the story that you're trying to tell, including the art style.
Yeah.
So I think they made the right call. But
yeah, because the moment you try to like course correct or whatever you want to call it, like it just messes things up because obviously it wasn't meant to be changed like midway through. Like for example, obviously the new Star Wars movies, like they should have just stuck with like the ideas they had from the beginning, but then they changed it in the second movie, and then they changed it again in the third movie, which just
that's
lost
a great
people's
example.
yeah, because that's like that's just so sad. Like there were interesting ideas, and I'm gonna say it, in every single one of these movies, at least 3 movies, even the last one, there were interesting concepts, but they just didn't like support each other. They just tried to do their own thing, and I don't know.
Very much.
So yeah, I would like to see like just the Halo 4 vision just completed.
I think the mod scene is capable of that. There does come a level in art direction though where you can't just change out every single ass. You can, but it gets kind of. It would be a pretty extensive mod to Halo Infinite to somehow change out every asset to be a Halo 5 asset. Not that it couldn't be done. Crazier has been done, as we have seen. Speaking of mods. Yeah. But I think that this affects the music in Halo too. Like direction. Like the composers, Neil and Kazuma, for instance, they were doing their jobs. I have the limited edition Halo 4 vinyl, and there's a great little booklet in there, and a lot of it has writings from Neil talking about what the process was like getting to that point. And Satoru Tajima was the audio director, and he had a huge part in the direction that Neil would wind up going with the music for Halo 4. And it's Neil doing his thing. Halo 4 soundtrack is very cool for that reason. It's like Neil isn't like a classical composer. I think the string elements and things that are in Halo 4's soundtrack are mostly the contribution on Kazuma's end. But all the electronic stuff, like, it's very cool music. It's very different from most Halo music, but it's cool separately. And it would have been up to the music directors to have changed that, to course correct for that if they, early on, if they wanted it to be different. But they were making a choice to have it be different, and there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with being different. It's just that people didn't take kindly to it. But I argue that in one of the videos I made at one point, where it's not up to the composers that you hate the music of Halo 4 and 5. It's up to the music directors or the project direction as a whole. Because again, I think the music, just like the art direction in those games, supports the story they were trying to tell, which is a way different kind of a story. It's written way differently than the previous Halo stories were written. Again, to hear Marty talk to Halo vets about the way that that original trilogy came about on a writing level, it was very patchwork, but it was all about larger themes and bigger ideas, and Halo 4 and 5 reduce the scale of that, massively, and make it more about more character driven, and it's just a whole completely different writing approach. And I think everything centers around that in a way that people don't really realize. They'll look at the music in a vacuum or the art direction in a vacuum, and the whole thing is a complete picture.
Definitely.
Yeah, and talking about the Halo 4 music, kind of reminded me. We talked about way back doing something like picking out our favorite, most Halo-y tracks, and picking out our most favorite non-Halo-y tracks, or the ones that stand out a bit. Whatever happened to that?
We should do that. We should be doing that next episode.
Yeah, because I think that's a...
Next time on Not a Halo Podcast.
Oh, no.
Shit. You're going to have to repick those.
Yeah. Because I think that's a really interesting topic. We could probably do that for another video, but just like talking about like what's the Halo sound, and what's the X sound, you know, and is it so wrong to step outside of that and try something new, which I think Halo 4 is a perfect example of, and I want to highlight that game because that game has some beautiful music.
Neo, did you want to say something? I feel like you've tried to cut in a couple times now.
No, just
okay,
good. That was just me just acknowledging.
I just want to give you the platform.
Yeah, well, see, I already feel like I talk too much, so I want to hang back a bit.
No, we have you here for a reason. I want you to speak your mind whenever you have thoughts.
I'll do that.
But I will interrupt you every time.
That's fine. That's fine.
Here's the problem.
That's karma because of my internet connection.
You and Wernissage are farther apart than any of us are in the world.
Yeah, it's insane how far apart we are. I think we're like perfectly...
You're 12 hours apart. Yep. You are on opposite sides of the globe. Like,
nice.
Completely opposite. So, I mean, Neo, your internet connection is slower than all of ours, and so your voice comes in later than ours. Like actually physically comes in later. So the reason that it winds up getting difficult to have you cut in is that you start talking after one of us has started talking.
Yeah,
so
I know.
Kind of like power through it.
It's terrible. You know? Hopefully it'll get rectified. I mean, I get back to good internet on Tuesday, actually, which is when I'm going home. So hopefully
make a huge difference.
That will improve things a lot from my end. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah. Also, video will also help, just like it. I think it's helping immensely right now. I think the fact that we can see each other is huge for our conversation flow.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps that we're all just beautiful as well, you know? We all have beautiful faces.
If the shoe fits.
I will accept that on the chin and just carry on, I guess. I won't comment on the matter.
That's just because Neo isn't here.
That's right. He would ruin the attractive vibe if he was.
Hell yeah.
About New Zealand for a second. I thought Marty's comment the other day that you weren't there for, Neo, was very funny. He was like talking about how Jason Jones went dark and moved down to one.
Oh yeah, he went to like some shithole like New Zealand or something.
Yeah, some Australia, New Zealand or something, you know. And he goes, and it was silent, and everyone went silent because they were like, "Is he shitting on New Zealand right now?" Like,
I'll just
he's like, "Come on, Neo, that's a joke for you.
I got the power to delete the server, so fucking."
It's all good. It was an awkward silence. They just had to keep moving on with the conversation because you just weren't there to respond to the friendly jabs from Marty.
Yeah,
it was very humorous.
I just remembered one of the most troubling things I've seen on YouTube in a while. There's a video called 10 Hours of Procedurally Generated Gent, which is a genre of metal music. It's all AI generated, and it sounds like good gent, honestly.
Interesting. Yeah.
It's all just made by some sort of algorithm or something, but all of the music just sounds like good, but it sounds like stuff you've already heard before.
Wild. That's interesting. I've always wanted to do an AI generated, take some jazz albums and throw them together and see if an AI.
I'd love to use it as an experimental tool in building something greater, but not rely on it, if that makes sense.
As the final product. That is also an interesting idea. That would be very cool to try to get some idea generation going. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, sort of carrying on with before we went to the experimental thing, and it's sort of a mentality I think I've started to adopt very recently, and very recently I mean literally I thought of this a week ago, but I think it is much better to be interesting than it is to be good. I think you should strive to have your own identity. I think the end goal is that you should be remembered for standing out or being unique and being the only one that sounds like the way you sound than it is to technically be the best. Because, I
like that.
Good isn't memorable. Interesting is memorable. And wouldn't you rather be memorable? Because I'd like to be memorable. I want to be remembered for what I want to make. And, hopefully what I make is interesting.
100%.
It is. Yeah, I feel like I'm always impressed with people who can produce really good mixes, and the mastering is perfect and it's fresh and it's clean. That's good and all, but I kind of feel like that's just my opinion, but I feel like you kind of missed the point of music in a way. It's music production, I get it, but some people just create songs and just make them sound really good, the bass is perfect, and the I don't know, the frequencies are perfect. I just kind of think it's sad how you ignore the creativity in the music itself, the art form. For me, it's that's my because like Alyx talked about, those orchestral cinematic stuff. They sound good, but is it anything more than that? It's just generic strings that sound really satisfying. I'd much rather listen to stuff like Alyx's songs. Not that they're badly produced. That's not what I'm talking about. I mean, just the oh shit,
kitty mix and just
yeah, exactly. No, but my point is that I'd rather listen to something that's much more. I don't care if it's not super cinematic. I just want something that's more original and creative, and the melodies themselves are actually interesting and catchy, and they make me feel something, more than just these strings sound really cinematic and nice, I don't know. I think sometimes people forget about creativity and just coming up with your own sound, or if we're
this
talking about
sounds
music.
good. Yeah, it's this sounds really good versus this is a good song,
Yeah, exactly.
I think that that's the major difference between Combat Evolved and Combat Evolved Anniversary right there. Artistically, musically, all of it. I think that it, in that exact same way, Combat Evolved, think about Guilty Spark, the way that it is, the level, the level design for the original and the anniversary version. That is the difference between the epic cinematic orchestra versions of Halo music, or even Star Wars, and the original recordings. That right there is the best visual comparison of that. It's a I saw a great Twitter comment yesterday, and it was the original is creepy dank swamp, and the other one is whimsical alien garden.
Yeah.
Yep. There's nothing scary about it. It's just really pretty.
Yeah.
Because there's no mystery, in that case, the point of it artistically is the tonal mystery, and they didn't think about those fundamental original, Wernissage, for instance. When you redesign a helmet, you're thinking about the core larger shapes and the more fundamental aspects of the design, and then going from there and maintaining those. They do the opposite with that, where it's almost you kept all of the micro details, but you reshaped them for no reason, and now it looks like a different helmet. 100%. It would be if you took the Halo 4 Chief helmet and reproportioned it in Photoshop to be the same proportions as the Mark 6, but it's got all the same weird lines and hex visor, and and that would be so uncanny valley.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really important to just like remember like the point of what you're creating is. Like that's probably I think a lot of people agree with me. Like that's my main issue with the Combat Evolved Anniversary. Speaking like visually, like even all the Forerunner spaces, like they're all just bright blue, kind of like. I don't know, when they used to be like really dark and you couldn't like see to the roof and stuff like that.
It was
like,
black and gold in it too.
Yeah, exactly.
And
you just had to follow these white small lights that like showed you the way. Well, now it's all just lit up, and you don't feel nervous just walking around there. Everything just feels
like you should.
Yeah, like it
100%.
feels pretty and safe and whimsical. I kind of think it's important to. Even if you want to remake something, you gotta figure out what the core is of it. But that's not always an easy task, of course. But I think that's the best way to think
But I
about
think that they it almost looks like they didn't even try. With so many anniversary efforts.
Sure it does.
Honestly, I never realized there was so much. Well, first of all, they fixed some lighting problems in Combat Evolved on MCC, and so I just played a little bit of that when it was snowing here the other day. Just for the nostalgia. And I turned my flashlight on one of the Forerunner surfaces, and when you turn the flashlight
it's amazing.
it goes from gray to gold, and you're like,
yeah.
I was like, what? I've never seen that before. And so when I played Infinite, I still had not realized that about Combat Evolved, and I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea to add gold to the Forerunner color palette.
It was always there.
That's not true. Combat Evolved did it first.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I had no idea. And also the Forerunner interiors were way darker than I remembered them being, and Infinites are really dark. And I was like, wow, it seems like it's almost with Infinite. I thought they had increased the reflectivity of things, and so consequently, a mirror bouncing off of a mirror is going to just be black. So I thought that was the effect happening. But artistically, they were trying to do that because that's what Combat Evolved did, and so. I guess I'm just like praising Infinite's Forerunner interiors. I do think they're pretty marvelous.
I mean, it's like the best.
I love them.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I think they look really cool. Having that kind of, especially with that kind of like that sort of reflectivity going on, where it gives it this really like spooky, eerie, just blue tone that I think is really it feels really ominous in a lot of cases, and I think that's really cool because that kind of harkens back to what CE did, and actually, because that's another thing with MCC, which is only kind of recently been addressed, I think, and maybe adds to the tone of what sort of has that spookiness with the CE Forerunner stuff. And the Gearbox and the PC version, and on MCC until last year, the flashlight only lit up about a third of the distance in front of you as it actually did on Xbox, and sort of, it's interesting to see the relationship between how the flashlight reacts to surfaces as you approach them, and how much that actually changes what it feels like as you're walking around in places like the cartographer or whatever, where like sort of the kind of shape of your peripheral vision changes with how the flashlight distance has been adjusted against to be closer to the original Xbox version. And it feels very much more like you're kind of always walking to like a lighthouse in the distance, and you're always closing in to some kind of like spookier detail that is kind of holding your attention.
That's a huge part of the art direction for that game, and for that to have been missing for so long is horrible.
Yeah, I just think it's sad, like how games nowadays don't use darkness the same way they used to, like shadows and stuff. Like Halo Infinite's night. Like the night skybox or whatever.
So bright. Apparently it's bugged. Apparently it's not supposed to be like that,
maybe it is bugged.
know.
Yeah, but like even all the Far Cry games and stuff, like I guess they're just afraid to make it dark, because some people might find that annoying.
Well, it doesn't look as good on an NVIDIA demo to have just darkness.
Yeah, exactly.
It just doesn't look as good.
That's probably it.
And technology, display technology, HDR isn't really there yet. You can get an HDR monitor, but normally that's HDR 400, which is pretty much no difference.
It actually looks it usually looks worse than just not having HDR at all if it's 400. 400 shouldn't have existed.
Blacks are gray, and Yeah, and so genuine HDR 1000 stuff that can look really cool, but most content doesn't even support it. So I'm sure we're moving in that direction, but like HDR essentially lets you have true blacks, like where the screen is legitimately black, and OLED screens definitely do that, of course. But anyway, like I think that we're just not there technologically, and I think that for that reason, devs would rather just get rid of any darkness because it doesn't even look that good anyway.
It's making me think now of like old movies versus the trends in production, I guess, of more modern movies where everything has to be visible all the time to
Yeah.
feed
Mhm.
the viewers eye candy, basically.
There's
Mhm.
never any negative
So-
space.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What I'm looking at right now is some stuff from the original Blade Runner, where a lot of
Mhm.
detail was like obscured despite it being this cyberpunk future with like neon lights and all that sort of stuff.
A lot of it is left up to the imagination.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's almost like dreamy or dreamlike.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, very much. Blade Runner is the
Even just
best
like
example
as
of
I'm
that.
watching the projector.
You don't get all the
Yeah.
details, so it allows your mind to fill some of it in.
Yeah.
Well, using
you
musical
could.
silence is the same thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Silence
Yeah.
the music. Oh yeah, people don't do that
100%.
much at all.
Yeah.
When was
Because
the
it
last
feels
time
like.
you let everything go to silence in the middle of your track? You know.
Yeah, exactly. It just feels like a lot of people these days just feel like it's cheap when you do that, when you leave stuff out, like, oh, you gotta flex with all the money you have, like, oh, look at our visual effects and stuff like that. When
Yeah,
like
we can pack it
there
all
is
in.
yeah, like there is a point
gonna
of
eat it.
having something obscured and not visible, like horror movies and stuff. Not that I watch a lot of horror movies, but you know, an important detail of that is to not show the monster or whatever it
Yeah.
is, like in day, like sunlight, you know.
Scariest
'cause
monster is the one you can't see.
Exactly,
Alien is
yeah.
a great example of that. We know what the alien
Yes.
looks like now because there's so many figures and stuff. But you don't. They didn't. People who watched that movie when it first came out didn't know. You know, because
Yeah.
you couldn't see that thing for most of that alien. You could not see at any point in that movie,
Yeah,
and it made it terrifying.
exactly.
The alien actually looks kind of stupid when you have like the skinny little human legs on it, you know,
Yeah.
like in a certain way, you know. But that part of it is what you couldn't see in the original movie, and so, you know, it benefited from that, not showing
Yeah.
that.
And then Alien Covenant, like the most recent one, we kind of
Yeah.
I think the final scene with the alien is like in like the middle of the day. I think it's like it's like a cloudy day, so it's like no shadows really and stuff. I don't know. It's just like kind of misses the point.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it's in the same genre or
Yeah,
the same
exactly.
universe even.
Kind of misses the point.
100%. I think that was a good talk. I think we should wrap it up since we're coming to a head here. That was a solid episode. I think that's going to be our legitimate episode 1.
Yeah, that was. I feel like it. You know, in the beginning, it was kind of like we had
got
to
there.
like warm up, but
We got there
we
in the
got
end.
there. Yeah, I liked it.
I have faith that we will always have that problem and we will always overcome it.
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
I think it's a matter
Which
of
is great,
just
you know.
experience and doing it again and again. I think it'll rev up quicker. I think the more we do it.
Especially when we do this every week, we're gonna get way more used to.
Yeah, and like so,
Getting
in
back.
my defense, I woke up at 5:30 in the morning to be here. So,
Jesus.
I'm
you know,
very appreciative. For
going
you doing
forward,
that.
I
I'm
will
very
probably
sorry I
make
didn't good on
coffee,
that.
and that will probably maybe energize my side of things a bit more.
Well, that's the other thing. So I noticed that I can't ever remember what time we agreed upon. I had said 8 Pacific Standard. I think we should be doing 9 Pacific Standard, which is an hour later than what we originally had said.
Okay,
I know time zones. That's tough.
is that okay
Wait, would
for
you say 9
Wernissage?
Pacific?
Yeah,
What was it? 9 Pacific?
9 Pacific, 9
Okay.
PST.
I'm just like, is that okay
Zero.
for Wernissage? Because that'd be he's the latest, right? So that's 9 p.m. for him.
It's true.
Isn't
No,
that?
that's
Oh, no, sorry.
7
Chinese?
p.m. for you. Pretty sure it's 7 p.m.
7 p.m. I mean, yeah.
So is that 12 Eastern? Am I right? It's 3 hours
Yes.
ahead. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, but 9 PST, isn't that when we started today? Or am I?
It is.
Yeah.
We started at like 9:30.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I
think
mean,
that works better.
yeah, I like 10 PST even works for me. So it's up to you guys.
Okay.
Should work
That
fine
might be
for me.
better for. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
That
thinking
might
of
be better for
Neo,
Neo.
so you don't like fucking destroy your body every time you wake up.
Well, I mean, I'm fine. I don't actually have like a job right now, so it's not really an issue for me. That
Okay.
might be something that'll change maybe when I get a job when I go back. I guess I'll see. I'll keep everyone updated.
We'll cross
Yeah.
that bridge when we get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make whatever accommodations we have to for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna read the outro. And cut in with your own goodbyes if you so choose. Because otherwise I could just simply record this like separately.
Yeah, I stopped recording. So should I start recording again?
You don't really know what to say.
It's a safe bet. Probably keep recording until we're like off the call even.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
You never know what's good.
Yeah, you should start recording again right now. I'm not sure how the hell I'm gonna sync all of this.
Have fun.
Don't worry about it.
Now that I fully have complete separate recordings from everybody, it's gonna be interesting.
Mhm.
I actually have no idea how I'm gonna do that. I'll figure it out. How should we? We'll talk about that at some point. Thank you all for joining us today. Not a Halo podcast is created in association with Pseudofusion Productions, LLC, free of any funding. If you'd like to support us, please share with your friends and do support the members of the show, Alyx, Neo, and Wernissage on their respective platforms, listed in the description. I'm Noah, and this is Not a Halo podcast. Goodbye.
Even the fucking music students clap on 1 and 3, and I'm like, you need to fucking reevaluate your life, dude.